Hello gentle listeners, and welcome back to episode 7 of Whispers of the Past. I'm your host, Josh, and today we're delving into one of London's most thrilling urban legends to have ever leaped from the shadows. So, prepare yourselves for a journey into the world of Spring-Heeled Jack, a figure whose legend has both puzzled and terrified for over a century. Picture London in the early 19th century. A city of fog-filled streets, gaslit alleys, and an ever-present sense of mystery. Amidst the hustle and bustle of this sprawling metropolis, a strange and unsettling figure began to make headlines. This was no ordinary person. This was Spring-Heeled Jack. The name itself conjures up images of a figure who defies the bounds of reality. Spring-Heeled suggests an almost otherworldly ability to leap and bound, as if gravity was a mere plaything in his hands. But who was this figure, and what drove the fascination and fear he inspired? Our story begins around 1837, with reports emerging from the foggy streets of London. The first sightings described Jack as a man with a bizarre and terrifying appearance. It was said that he wore a tight-fitting, dark outfit with a helmet that covered his face. Witnesses often spoke of how his eyes glowed with an eerie light, while his mouth curved into a sinister grin. Imagine walking home alone at night, minding your own business, when suddenly a figure appears out of nowhere, with glowing eyes and a grin that speaks of misdeeds, who then just effortlessly leaps over a wall or rooftop with an unnerving grace, leaving you both confused and terrified. That was Spring-Heeled Jack, his seemingly supernatural jumping ability making him a figure of both awe and dread. One of the most famous early encounters involved a young woman named Mary Stevens. One day in October of 1837, after visiting her parents in Battersea, she was walking to Lavender Hill, where she was employed as a servant. On her way through Clapham Common, a strange figure leapt at her from a dark alley. After immobilizing her with a tight grip of his arms, he began to kiss her face, rip her clothes, and touch her skin with his hands, which were, according to her, cold and clammy as those of a corpse. In a panic, the girl screamed, making the attacker quickly flee from the scene, probably jumping over a few houses on his way. The commotion brought several residents who immediately launched a search for the aggressor, but he could not be found. The next day, the leaping character is said to have chosen a very different victim near Mary Stevens' home, inaugurating a method that would reappear in later reports. A coachman was steering his carriage down a street as he did every day, when, out of an alleyway, a man jumped in the way of his carriage. This caused the coachman to lose control, crash, and severely injure himself. Several witnesses claimed that the man escaped by jumping over a 9-foot, or 2.7 meter, high wall while cackling with a high-pitched, ringing laughter. There are quite a few more encounters with Jack that happened over the span of a century, but I'd like to skip past a lot of them, as most of the early sightings were all very similar, and instead tell you about one encounter that occurred 40 years later. It was quite different from the rest, and I found it quite funny. A report came from a group of soldiers in August of 1877 at the Aldershot garrison. The story went as follows. A sentry was on duty at the North Camp looking out into the darkness, when he spotted a peculiar figure advancing towards him. The soldier issued a challenge, which went unheeded, and then the figure just disappeared, to then reappear beside him. The figure then proceeded to deliver several slaps to his face. Another guard saw this and shot at this mysterious figure, but it had no visible effect. Some sources claim that the soldier may have fired blanks at him, others that he missed or fired warning shots. The strange figure then disappeared into the surrounding darkness with astonishing bounds. Another reported sighting also happened in the autumn of 1877. Spring-Heeled Jack was reportedly seen at Newport Arch in Lincoln, Lincolnshire, wearing a sheepskin. An angry mob supposedly chased him and cornered him, and just as in Aldershot a while before, residents fired at him to no effect. As usual, he was said to have made use of his leaping abilities to lose the crowd and disappear once again. As Jack's legend spread, so did the variety of his reported abilities. Some described him as having claws or talons that were capable of slashing through clothes and flesh with ease, while others claimed he could breathe fire or emit a ghastly metallic sound that chilled the bone. The diversity in these reports only added to the legend's mystique. It wasn't long before the newspapers picked up on the story, amplifying the legend with sensational headlines and vivid details. The press played a crucial role in shaping the public's perception of Spring-Heeled Jack, turning him into a figure of urban myth and fear. These stories often exaggerated his deeds, which made him seem both more powerful and malevolent. The media's portrayal of Jack contributed to a sense of collective anxiety. Imagine a Londoner reading about Jack's latest exploits and becoming fearful of the dark, abandoned alleyways and foggy corners where he was said to lurk. The fear was palpable, a shared dread that seeped into everyday life. Despite the widespread reports, no one ever captured or definitively identified Spring-Heeled Jack. This lack of concrete evidence led many to believe that he was either a master of disguise, or that the sightings were the result of a coordinated hoax. Some people speculated that Jack was simply a wealthy nobleman or disgruntled military officer who was using his resources to stage elaborate pranks. This idea suggested that Jack was someone who held a grudge against society, and that his nightly escapades were a form of twisted revenge against those he had felt had wronged him. While these theories never gained substantial evidence, they added an intriguing layer to the story, making Jack a figure who might have been motivated by more than just a desire to cause chaos. As we continue our journey into the shadowy streets of 19th century London, it's important to understand the broader context in which Spring-Heeled Jack emerged. This was a time of rapid social and technological change, where the boundaries between the known and the unknown were constantly being tested. The Industrial Revolution was in full swing, and with it came a sense of both progress and dislocation. London was transforming into a modern metropolis, but with that transformation came a host of anxieties about crime, about the unknown, and about the future. In this environment, it's no wonder that a figure like Spring-Heeled Jack would capture the public's imagination. He seemed to embody the very fears that were lurking just beneath the surface of society. Fears of the dark, of the unnatural, and of those who defied the rules of the ordinary world. To the people of London, Jack wasn't just a man, he was a symbol of all that was unsettling in the rapidly changing world around them. One fascinating theory suggests that Jack was not just one person, but a series of individuals taking on the role. This theory suggests that various people might have used the Spring-Heeled Jack persona to commit crimes or create fear, each adding their own twist to the legend. Another intriguing theory is that Jack's jumps were achieved with the help of mechanical devices or trampolines. This idea paints Jack as a kind of early trickster, using ingenious methods to create the illusion of supernatural abilities. This theory, while speculative, adds a layer of ingenuity to the legend. Yet, not everyone saw Spring-Heeled Jack as a malevolent figure. Some accounts from the time paint him more as a mischievous trickster, a devilish prankster who revelled in the fear he caused but meant no real harm. This version of Jack adds a certain ambiguity to the legend, making him a figure who could be interpreted in multiple ways. Was he a villain, a victim of his own madness, or simply a mischievous spirit playing tricks on an unsuspecting public? The fascination with Spring-Heeled Jack didn't just stay within the realm of folklore, it also bled into the arts and literature of the time. Victorian society was captivated by the strange and the mysterious, and Jack became a frequent subject of the popular penny dreadfuls, cheap, sensationalist publications that were the predecessors to modern-day pulp fiction. These stories often exaggerated Jack's powers and exploits, transforming him into a near-mythical figure who could leap over entire buildings and disappear into the night without a trace. In these stories, Jack was sometimes depicted as a kind of anti-hero. Someone who, despite his terrifying nature, fought against greater evils or sought to right some deep wrong. This portrayal added a complexity to the character that mirrored the dual nature of Victorian society itself, a world caught between strict moral codes and a burgeoning fascination with the macabre. As time went on, the legend of Spring-Heeled Jack began to evolve. Theories about his origin became even more varied, with some suggesting he was not human at all, but rather a creature from another dimension, or even an alien visitor. The idea that Spring-Heeled Jack might have been an extraterrestrial visitor is particularly fascinating, as it ties into a broader tradition of otherworldly beings influencing human history. If Jack were an alien, his strange abilities and terrifying appearance could be explained as the result of advanced technology or biology far beyond our own. This theory, while highly speculative, adds a sci-fi twist to the legend, turning Jack from a mere urban legend into a figure of cosmic mystery. Another aspect of the Spring-Heeled Jack legend that deserves attention is the psychological impact he had on the people of London. The fear he inspired was not just due to his physical abilities, but also to the way he seemed to embody the unknown. Jack was a figure who defied explanation, and in a time when so much of life was uncertain, he became a symbol of all the things that could not be controlled or understood. His presence in the city was a reminder that, no matter how much progress society made, there were still forces at work in the world that were beyond human comprehension. The mystery surrounding Spring-Heeled Jack wasn't confined to London alone. As the legend spread, similar sightings began to emerge in other cities across the UK and even in Europe. In Paris, Vienna, and other major cities, reports surfaced of figures with characteristics eerily similar to Jack's. This phenomenon suggested that the legend had transcended its London origins, evolving and adapting to local fears and cultural contexts. Each city added its own variations to the story, contributing to the legend's enduring allure. In some versions of the story, Jack was said to have had a connection to occult practices or secret societies. These narratives portrayed him as a member of a hidden order with access to forbidden knowledge or arcane rituals, which granted him his supernatural abilities. This interpretation of Jack taps into a rich vein of Gothic and esoteric themes, intertwining the legend with the broader lore of hidden powers and ancient mysteries. Another theory that has emerged in more recent years posits that Spring-Heeled Jack was a manifestation of mass hysteria, a collective psychological phenomenon in which fear and anxiety spread rapidly through a population. In this interpretation, Jack's supernatural attributes and his sudden appearances and disappearances can be seen as products of the heightened tensions and anxieties of the time. This idea suggests that Jack was less a physical entity and more a reflection of the psychological state of Victorian society. This notion of mass hysteria brings to mind other historical cases where fear and rumour spiraled into widespread panic, such as the infamous Great Fear during the French Revolution or the Salem witch trials. These events highlight how powerful collective emotions can be in shaping perceptions of reality, turning ordinary events into extraordinary ones. In the case of Spring-Heeled Jack, it's possible that the combination of rapid social change, urbanization, and the sensationalist press created the perfect storm for a figure like Jack to emerge and capture the public imagination. Yet, it's important to recognize that even if Spring-Heeled Jack was a product of collective fear, the impact of his legend was very real. The fear he inspired had tangible effects on the lives of ordinary people. For example, during the height of the Jack panic, some areas of London saw an increase in self-imposed curfews, with residents staying indoors after dark to avoid encountering the mysterious figure. Law enforcement was also affected, with police patrols being increased in certain areas in response to the growing public anxiety. As the decades passed, the legend of Spring-Heeled Jack began to fade from the public consciousness, overshadowed by newer stories and changing societal concerns. However, he never entirely disappeared. Jack's influence can be seen in various elements of modern popular culture, from comic book characters with extraordinary physical abilities to the trope of the elusive, mysterious figure who operates outside the bounds of society. His legacy lives on in the archetype of the urban legend, a story that blurs the line between truth and fiction, passed down through generations as a cautionary tale or a thrilling mystery. In more recent times, Jack has been a subject of interest for paranormal investigators and enthusiasts, who view him as a potential case of a cryptid, a creature whose existence is suggested by folklore, but not confirmed by science. This interpretation places Jack alongside other mysterious figures like Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, beings that straddle the boundary between the known and the unknown, challenging our understanding of the natural world. Before we wrap up today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on the lasting impact of Spring-Heeled Jack. His legend endures because it taps into universal themes of fear, mystery, and the supernatural. In a world where so much is known and understood, Jack remains a tantalizing mystery, a reminder that there are still shadows in the corners of our history and our minds that have yet to be fully explored. In my opinion, I like to think that Spring-Heeled Jack might have been Loki, the trickster god from Norse mythology, just taking some time out of Scandinavia to visit London and play some pranks on unsuspecting victims. If you have your own theories or stories related to Spring-Heeled Jack, or if there's another urban legend you're curious about, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to hear from you and perhaps feature your stories in a future episode. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Spring-Heeled Jack. I hope you enjoyed delving into this captivating legend as much as I did. Until next time, I'm Josh, and this has been Whispers of the Past. If you did enjoy this episode, then please like and subscribe, leave me a comment if you're listening on YouTube, or send me an email to whispersofthepastreviews@gmail.com. See you next time.